Visordown is in Hampshire. We've been out for a bit of gentle trail riding and a road test on these two. Now, you might have noticed that there's a whole new class of bike this year. It's the mini adventure bike. We've got, there are four of them, two on the way. It's the G310 GS from BMW, the Visordown 250 from Suzuki, the CRF250 Rally, this one from Honda, and the Versys-X 300. These are the only two that have arrived so far. The other two, we're not sure when they're going to arrive. I think sometime in the autumn, so we thought we're not going to wait for that. We'll just get out and see how these two compare.
Engine. The Versys-X 300's 296cc engine is a Euro 4 compliant version of the one found in the Ninja 300 and Z300, and that's good news because it's a really good little engine with a bit of top end zing. It's been retuned for more mid-range, but that little top end surge is still there, picking up from about 8,000 RPM. It's fun because it feels like an eagerness to rev, a willingness to be thrashed. And although it's not going to do a standing quarter, it makes 40 horsepower, which is pretty good for a 300cc parallel twin. It's enough for the Versys to achieve good motorway cruising speeds with about 2,500 RPM to spare before the red line, which is at 12,000. I'd guess it will push on to a top speed of about 100 miles per hour. It's a bit vibey. My sat-nav kept going haywire and restarting, but not unbearably so. The mirrors, at least, don't shake everything behind you into a blur. The CRF250 Rally engine has much more of a trail bike feel, and you're going to see a pattern emerging in this respect because the Honda is pretty much a trail bike with a screen. The single-cylinder 250cc engine is a lot down on power compared to the Versys with 24.7 horsepower, and it makes it lower at 8,500 RPM compared to 11,500. It also makes its peak torque much lower, 16.6 pound-foot at 6,750 RPM compared to 18.9 pounds-foot at 10,000 RPM. So on the road it feels gutless compared to the Kawasaki with none of that top end surge. It will still manage good motorway cruising speeds, but feels much closer to the edge of its performance envelope. But off-road, the lower down torque makes the Honda feel a bit easier to control, with more there at an instant's notice to pull you up an incline. Handling. Again, the Honda feels more like a dirt bike, nimbler and lighter weight than the Kawasaki, which has more of a road-biased adventure bike feel. A key difference is in the wheels. The CRF250 Rally is on a 21-inch front and 18-inch rear, while the Versys has a 19-inch front and 17 rear. Add to that the tyres, knobblies on the CRF and dual sports on the Versys, and the Honda is much more confidence-inspiring on dirt, tracking reassuringly through rocky sections of trail like they're not there. The Versys will do it, but not quite with the same sure-footedness, making for more of a nervous experience. Although they're street biased, I wasn't inspired with confidence by the Kawasaki's tyres on the road either. They're IRC Trail Winner GP210s and they felt a little vague to me. The CRF's knobblies though are a real limitation on the road, as you'd expect, requiring you to adjust cornering speed. You can feel the squishy rubber flexing even at modest lean angles. Suspension. You know what I'm going to say about the CRF250 Rally now, don't you? More trail bike. It has that tendency of proper off-road bikes for the suspension to compress significantly under your weight and rise when you get off it, so that you have to kick the side stand up before getting on. It means the seat isn't as tall as it looks. I'm 5'9" and I could get both feet flat on the ground, just like on the Versys. The CRF suspension setup was much better at soaking up the trail. It's definitely the one you'd use for a jump. And its seat lets you move backward and forward more, putting extra weight on the front or rear. But away from the dirt, it feels like what it is, a dirt bike on the road, pivoting forward dramatically under braking. The Versys, meanwhile, is much more road biased, so more comfortable under hard braking on tarmac, while still coping pretty well on the trail. Brakes. Both bikes offer acceptable brakes that aren't gonna scare the life out of newer riders with ferocious bite. The Versys seem to have a little more power despite the Honda's slightly bigger front disc at 296mm compared to 290. But the Honda's knobbly tyres and long travel forks again play a part. Off-road, the front tyre massively increases confidence under braking, while on-road, it combines with the fork dive to diminish it. Both bikes have ABS, but the CRF has ABS that can be turned off at the rear wheel for more off-road control. Equipment. This is where the Versys comes into its own. ABS is the only kind of electronic rider aid you'll find on either machine, so the comparison comes down to more basic practical equipment, which the Versys has more of. As well as that tall screen, taller than the CRFs, and providing impressive protection, the Versys comes with that very useful luggage rack. And there's an adventure edition of the Versys, which comes with extras including skinny panniers, handguards, and a centre stand for £750 more than the base model at £5,899. And there's an urban one, including a top box centre stand and handguards for £5,549. We like. What impresses quickly about the Versys is its all-round capability: wind protection, luggage carrying capacity, motorway cruising ability, off-road ability. If you can live with 40 horsepower, then it could be the only bike you ever need for commuting, touring or whatever, and it proves that 40 horsepower is enough to have fun. The CRF250 Rally, on the other hand, impresses for its greater green laning ability, combined with some longer distance potential thanks to that screen. It's also got a bigger tank than the CRF250L it's based on at 10 litres compared to 7.8. If off-roading is what you want to do, it will take you places the Versys won't. At one point on the test ride, the trail twisted around a corner and steeply downhill, and I couldn't really see where it was going. I didn't really fancy it on the Kawasaki, but on the Honda, no problem. Plus, the CRF250 Rally looks great, a bit like a mini version of the Africa Twin Enduro Sports concept unveiled by Honda last year. We don't like. The Versys X300 has an exceptionally hard seat. In practice, it didn't actually prove as uncomfortable as I initially expected on sitting on it, probably no more so than the narrow seat on the CRF, but why Kawasaki hasn't just made it softer is unfathomable. Also, the Versys colours. If you don't like bright green, and some people don't, believe it or not, Kawasaki, then you're stuck with drab grey. Next year there's a new option of black. Come on, it's an exciting little bike, give us a red one or something. Comparatively, the CRF250 Rally lacks excitement on the road, but it is what it is, a 250 trail bike with a screen, and a good one. Neither bike seems very cheap given the capacity, at $5,149 for the Kawasaki and $4,329 for the Honda.
I haven't spent as much time on the road riding this yet as my colleague has, Simon. And what you found it?
It's not quite got as much power as you'd like. It's punchy low down, but it kind of runs out of steam at motorway speeds, and say above 70 miles an hour, it kind of just feels a bit flittish,
Right.
a bit nervy.
It's a lot down on power, isn't it? So you've got 40 horsepower on that and 25 on this. So it's a big difference.
But that deficit, you're completely unaware of that when you're riding off-road. And there's no...
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
You're not...
In fact, if anything, the engine maybe feels a bit better off-road than that one does, because it's possibly got a little bit more low down punch, hasn't it?
Yeah, and you're reminded when you ride it on the road and you have to do a few long stints in it, like what I've had to do. The seat's pretty uncomfortable. It sends my ass to sleep within, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And that, and the fact that it's really narrow and the sitting position, the fact you're high up, it does remind you that you are riding a CRF 250 with a bit of extra plastic on it. And for that reason, I'm not a huge fan of it on the road. But today, when we took it off-road, it took all of about 3 minutes before I was really enjoying it. It's light, it's punchy, it handles well, its tyres mean that you can brake later, get on the gas, and it's really confidence-inspiring.
Yeah.
Verdict. One of the things this test shows is what a broad-term adventure bike is, and how two machines in the same class can be totally different but both valid. Which of these bikes is best comes down simply and only to what you expect an adventure bike to be. If it's an all-rounder that will tour or be your daily road bike, then it's clearly the Versys. If it's an off-road bike that can also take you longer distances by road, then it's obviously the CRF 250 Rally. For the purposes of this test though, the Kawasaki wins by a smidgen and based purely on value. Given that it's £180 cheaper than the Honda, it just seems that overall you get more, including, for example, an extra cylinder.